Hi, everyone. It's so good to have you join us for a conversation about Native American Heritage Month. I'm Paloma, and I'm the Spanish Program Coordinator at Launch Assist, and I'm joined by my dear colleague, Sally.
Hi, Paloma. And to those who are watching or listening, I'm Sally, and I'm continuing my career in the school food service as the Senior Advisor at Lunch Assist. November is Native American Heritage Month, and like all Heritage Months, it's a time when teachers, journalists, and other organizations, including us, like to think more closely about the history and contributions of a group of people.
That is correct. And sometimes we also like to talk about the conflicts and the not so pretty side of history in relation to such celebrations. I must admit, Sally, I didn't feel I had the right to talk about this topic because I don't identify myself as a Native American. But I also came to realize that our research and thinking about this topic and writing on this topic can be part of my own personal learning and reflection. But for you, Sally, it may be different because your grandmother was an indigenous woman. Could you share more about that?
Yes, my maternal grandmother, who was the matriarch of our family, was a Cherokee. Her family really valued education, and her mother insisted that if her boys were going to get a college education, her only daughter was too. So my grandmother became one of the few women who went to college in a time when most men didn't even go to college. And I can't imagine how few Indigenous women went to college at that time. But her life took a different turn when she married an Irish immigrant she met in college, and they raised their family as a traditional American family. But because of her background, there was always a sensitivity, and still is in my family, to Native American issues. And her own grandmother had been on the Trail of Tears, which was when the Cherokee people were forcibly removed from North Carolina and marched to Oklahoma in the dead of winter. Many people died along the way, and the stories that her grandmother told her have become part of our family lore.
Thank you for sharing, Sally. I really think it's a painful history for many Indigenous people that it's often filled with unjust federal policies. Native Americans were stripped of so many things that were part of their identity, including their food. And I believe what most people in this country know about Native American, and that definitely includes me, is rooted in stereotypes created by sugar-coated narratives that we are told by non-natives.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is a term called food sovereignty. And food sovereignty is a concept that was developed in 1996 by a group called Via Campesina, which is a global movement of farmers and their supporters. Their goal is, quote, the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and the right to define their own food and agricultural systems, unquote. So when Native Americans, such as my grandmother's family, were relocated to a different climate and a land of lesser quality, or when tribes lost their fishing rights to get the food that they had depended on, or when the animals that they depended on for food were hunted to extinction, then they lost their control over their food systems. And that system was replaced with a food system of dependency controlled by other people.
Hmm. So, through the lens of food sovereignty, what do you think we can do to help Native Americans reclaim the right to nutritious local foods and through to their own harvesting?
Well, we can certainly support the farmers and groups who are working to regain control of their food system. And that includes having access to natural resources such as water and being at the table when policies are developed that's going to impact Native American communities. We can also partner with any local production, producers who might be in business and use their foods in our schools. And we can also be intentional on including and highlighting Native American foods on our menus, such as corn and squash.
So it sounds like we can use a lot of the concepts from food sovereignty to inform our farm to school programs. So this idea of food and sustainability feels like a new on-trend concept for school nutrition. But if we think about it, indigenous groups have been eating sustainable since forever, using harvesting methods that improve the ecosystem and eating locally and with the seasons, right?
Exactly. And otherwise, they would have starved to death centuries ago. We wouldn't be talking here today. But yeah, farm to school is a new term for an old concept. And it's not really not that hard to incorporate some of the agricultural traditions of Native Americans into our menus. So a lot of times people think of bison and wild rice when they think of Native American foods, but that's actually pretty narrow. We don't think of fish and seafood, although salmon and cod and oysters were very commonly eaten by Native American people. And they were extremely talented farmers and agriculturalists and gifted many of their products to the world at large. So I wonder if you can identify with these Native American foods that you might have incorporated in your diet recently. Potatoes, quinoa,
Yeah,
tomatoes,
absolutely.
chili peppers, and maybe the biggest gift that they gave us of all, chocolate.
Yum. I must say, I love all of those foods, but chocolate has to be my favorite. And so, Sally, since chocolate comes from cacao, which comes from a tree, which is a plant, can we argue that chocolate is a salad?
Yes, I agree with you. And it's too bad we just can't figure out a way to get that into the vegetable subgroups, or we would all be eating 5 a day every day.
Yeah. Well, I know we could go on talking about this, but one thing that we like everyone to take note of is that Native American Heritage Month, that on this month, opportunities exist for non-natives to learn about their history and culture. And I think one of the best ways to honor a culture is to rethink and question the narrative of our history and to acknowledge the painful parts of it.
Yes, I think it's a really good opportunity to reevaluate what kind of society we want to live in going forward. Do we want to live in one where we have erased the history of the Native American people, or do we want to celebrate and lift up some of their traditions? And we have the power to do that in our child nutrition programs. Farm to School is a very powerful tool for supporting food sovereignty and health and nutrition and cultural revitalization, and making our communities just overall a better place.
Making our communities stronger for sure. Thank you, Sally. That is very inspiring.
Well, then thank everybody for tuning in. It was good to talk to you about this and share a little bit of my family history with you, Paloma.
We loved hearing about it, Sally. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone on behalf of the team at Launch Assist. We'll see you soon, and I'll see you soon, Sally.
Okay, bye-bye.